the breadth and depth of my knowledge and experience is vast. And I can't teach people in like one event over a couple of days. This could take years to get out of my head, right? Some of the stuff that's in here. I've got 5 people that bring us deals. One of them's been with me for 13 years and he still learns. To this day, he'll go, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So the more people deal with me on a regular basis, the better they can learn from me. So I'm just going to run through a few of the deals that we've bought in the last 12 months, 18 months that have gone through. It's not so much the net profit, but the costs involved. It all depends on certain facts I'm going to go into. And I'm going to give you a sort of little taste on how much they could have been bought for originally on the open market, what we paid for them, why we paid that amount, and then obviously the result we got on it. And once we've done that, we've gone through them, then I'm going to take you on a sort of live search of the stuff that I've actually refused recently, because 2 of them have gone through auction very recently. And that will show you why I chose not to buy, because I think you can learn just as much about the ones I've turned down, about the ones I've actually bought. They can teach us a great lesson, and there's little nuances, especially now when the market's very uncertain. They're not obvious to start with, but when you, right, okay, and I'll do a little street view, issues that I had with some of these properties, some of them are just straightforward, numbers don't stack sometimes. It will just give you an indication of the reasons why I choose not to buy something. And we have been caught out ourselves. I'll also share with you a couple of live transactions we've got. So this is a property that we purchased, and this was on the market, £325,000. That's the sort of thing that an owner-occupier would buy, or perhaps a developer would buy to refurbish it and sell it on. And it needed modernisation, but it had retained all of its original features. It had been on the market since 2021. There's 3 things I look for. One is the circumstances. The second is the timing. Is there any leverage, right? Now, on this particular property, there was leverage, and the reason why it kept bouncing back, the roof had been sprayed internally in the loft with sprayed insulation. That sprayed insulation then deemed it unmortgageable because it stops the timbers from breathing. The circumstances were it was a probate, and they just got absolutely cheesed off with it in the end. So we ended up paying £250,000 for that. Right? So we was in for a total of £263,410. And we sold it for £302,000, but we got back from the sale £4,020. Now, the buyer pays an extra 1% buyer's premium and pays £750 to our legal costs, plus our search feedback. So we got back an extra £4,020. So that gave us a net profit of 42,610 quid. And bearing in mind, because we're a limited company and we're buying probates all the time and we don't spend any money on them, then we are exempt from paying stamp duty. That was our net profit on that particular deal. And when I look back at that house, it's a nice looking house. So this is the reason why we purchased that house. And we was fairly confident that someone will pay us more than we'd paid for it. So that was just one of the transactions that was successful in the last, within the last 18 months. And this particular house, as you can see here, it says, and this was on the market for £450,000. They had tons of people after this. It's a pretty looking house and it's imposing looking. And it was grade 2 listed in a conservation area, and it was very close to the station. But we're nowhere near 450, nowhere near. I thought it was worth 525 if it was done up really nice. We agreed to buy it at £365,000, and we sold it prior to auction. And there is a reason for that. An agent friend of mine, and he said to me, I've got a guy who will take your completion. So if someone completes in my shoes, in other words, the same day as mine, I don't have to pay stamp duty again, because it becomes then what they call a sub-sale. And someone's going to take the same day completion as me. I use their money to complete the purchase. It's deemed by Inland Revenue a sub-sale. So you're exempt from stamp duty on a sub-sale. And I thought, well, 400 grand, that's a good profit really, because we're not borrowing any money on this. There's no stamp duty. I paid the agent 6 grand, including the VAT. Our legal costs are the same usually every time, 295. So we sold it for 400 grand. We had a net profit of 25,800 quid. Now, I don't know about you. If I can take that and run, I haven't got to complete it. I haven't got the completion. So we could have easily done another 12, 15 grand in cost there. So to take 25,800 quid was a commercial decision, was a certainty of 25 grand profit. I take that every day of the week. I haven't got a problem. And then we got this one here around the same sort of time. This had been round the block a few times. It was on the market for 300,000 and they'd sold it around the 325 mark, but it had problems. Circumstances were, Dad, this as an investment, and she was sick to the back teeth of it because she kept selling it for 300 grand, but people kept messing her about. And then someone had a survey done and said that it was unmortgageable. And I was very skeptical about the survey because I've been around the block a few times. I've dealt with thousands of transactions. So I had a look at it, and what it was, there was an outside loo. It was just a single story called an outhouse originally, and that was single skin. But the rest of it was 9-inch solid brickwork. Because of that, he deemed it substandard construction. I'm looking at that thinking, what? That was ridiculous for that surveyor to say that. But it done me a favour. Then the vendor is panicking. Now, she's owned it for years. You know, there was a problem with the survey, and we bought that for £250,000 and we sold it in auction for 342,000. Now, this one we completed. So we had finance costs, we had stamp duty to pay. I knew it was worth 300 grand every day of the week. You know, it cost us 250. We had all these other costs. Agents fees was 6,656. Now, I want you to see the difference, you see. When you start getting and racking up costs of legal costs, hidden costs, finance costs, stamp duty, that cost us a lot of money in extra fees on top of the £250,000. So, you know, they're £22,356,000 worth of costs. That's a lot of costs. So we got to have a decent margin on that. We got back from the sale for £4,420. So we made a net profit of 74 grand. That was a good day in auction. Everything was right about it. It's a pretty looking house. But you see where this pattern's emerging from the type of stock that we look at now. And the idea of this today is to show you the upsides as well as the downsides. There are downsides. You know, if you've never done this before, it can be quite daunting. It can be quite, if you've bought the right stock, you're probably going to be okay. You buy the wrong stock, then there's a different kettle of fish. And that's what I want to lead into now, because I'm going to show you something that looked on the surface to be perfect. Share this screen, but I'm going to come out of where I am at the moment. So I'm going to go into Rightmove. So this particular property, I'm going to show you, it's live on Rightmove today. And this is a property that we got offered, and here it is. This was on the market originally. When we got offered this, it was £300,000. It's a pretty looking house, isn't it? I mean, it's not, you know, it's brick fronted. It's got, you can see here, everything is, this is typically an auction that I'd get very excited about. I think, yeah, everything's right about it. I did rush down to have a look at it when it first came on. This had a structural problem at the back. With the stamp duty, I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to be around the 250 mark. But I just want you to say all the pictures are there. You can see the pictures. It's everything's right about it. But when we look a bit closer, then I start to worry, because when the market is weak, any weakness in the house will show up. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's just have a look. When we look at the map, straight away, I can see there's a railway line and it goes right behind the property. So I now know there's a railway line behind it. So that doesn't excite me, because I'm thinking that's one of my things I tend to try and keep away from. Sometimes it's okay. It's enough to put enough people off to make it a weaker purchase. Now, when I go onto the street view, there's the house, right? And then I look up here. It's quite a tight road. This is actually quite a busyish road. It's a cut-through road. There's no traffic on it today, but it is quite a cut-through. You can't park this side of the road either. And when you just drive down here, you'll see the road gets very tight. And if we look around this road here, problems parking, because you've got yellow lines down one side of that road, which is the side road. So you now know there's a parking issue on this particular house. That's putting me off a little bit. I'm looking at that thinking, it needs further investigation. I want to look at the floor plan. I can see from the floor plan, this is a 1,200 square foot house. That's a nice size house. A nice size house. So now I want to do a bit more research. What's this house worth in? So I'll go down to property sale history. I'll click on here, which is sold prices. And I can see here straight away, there's an end of terrace one here. This is number 4, and this has gone through at 362,500. Now that's going to give me a little bit of confidence. Very similar start. It's old fashioned, so but there is a difference between this house and the one I'm looking at, which says here off-street parking for 2 cars. That's its parking space down the side there. Now that is huge, massive. You've got a tight road. You can't park there. If you've got parking for a house, that can uplift its value by a substantial amount. So now that 365 is not a figure that I want to pay attention to, because the agent's telling me it's worth 4 to 425. I'm not so sure. I'm not getting the right vibes. Let's do a bit more searching, shall we? Let's go a quarter of a mile from there and see what else I can see. There's a nice, pretty looking house, Clare Road. That's the house the road round the corner. This is a 3-bed end of terrace at 635 grand. It's a pretty house. I think this is a better looking house than the one we've got. This is added extension. You can see straight away from this kitchen, they've squared the back addition up, someone spent a lot of money on this house. You can see where I'm talking about the extension. They've gone right across the side there. They've done a proper job on this. This would not have been cheap. It's got a shed at the back. Well, they don't call them a shed. They call them cabins now. But you can see what I mean. To get our one to this standard is going to cost a lot of money. So that's not really a comparable. So I'm going to have a scroll through. There's another one there in Clare Road at 475. This is probably closer to what we've got. Again, a pretty looking house. I think this is a better looking house. Again, it's had a lot of money spent on it. This one doesn't look like it's been extended. Not far off the same square footage. The floor plan's similar. Better location. I don't think ours is anywhere near this. You know, ours is a worse road. Doesn't look as nice. So I'm looking at my one thinking, is it 400? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not so sure. But we passed on it. They said we'll take 240, and I said no, I'm at 225, and they thought I was mad. When we do look, and we look further afield, and we say, okay, so where did it sell for in auction? Right. So we know it's gone for auction recently, and a quick search. This is EI Group, by the way. If you haven't got EI Group, it's well worth looking at. I'll just go CT5, which is the location, and it should come up. And there it is, sold for £256,000. I was right. The gut was right. Bear in mind, if we'd have bought that, we'd have had to have completed it. We'd have had stamp duty. We'd have had finance costs. It would have probably cost us the best part of at least 18 to 20 grand to buy that particular house. If we'd have paid 225, it would have probably been about the right money to buy it for, because we'd have probably been in for 240 odd, and we might have made 15 grand on it. But you can see why everything was right about it to start with. But when I start digging, I'm not so sure. There wasn't anyone there to pay top dollar for that house because of where it was. And if I'm feeling it in a weaker market, it shows up. The weakness in a market shows up the weakness in a house. And them two weaknesses, which was the road and the parking, and the railway line at the back, to me, was enough of a put off to say, no, I think I'll give that a miss. And I know the area quite well. I think that was the right decision, so you can see where I'm coming from. Then the next one is a little bit further afield, and it's an area that I do like, and it's in Oxford. It was brought to me by someone who know very well. There we are, Silver Road in Oxford. Now, we had the opportunity to buy this house. It was on the market for 300 grand, and it's in a good location. Everything was right about it. Look at bang on. This house had a little structural problem. I offered 250 on this house. The agent thought I was taking the piss. He thought, no, your mate, it's worth more than that. He paid 270 for it, and I think he got quite close to the 300 grand. And you can see here it sold for £306,000. We can see from this location there are houses about that are substantially more than 300 grand. There's a 3-bed in Hurst Street, although this had a loft room. You can see there with the with the window there, sold at 650. There's another one there at 625. That had 4 beds. That had another loft room. There's one similar, 500 grand, hasn't sold, 2-bed box bay. No, not direct comparable, but close. There's an end of terrace 3-bed there, flat fronted, probably similar. Had a loft room again. You can see the window in the top there. This is probably comparable in Sydney at 450, 2-bedroom house. We can see that should have been around the 400 grand mark, 450 mark. This is probably it's definitely it's comparable because it's got a 1 window up the top, bay window downstairs, similar to the one that we had there. This is guided at 425. This is reduced on the 1st of September, still not sold. My hunch was probably right. Well, it was right, because otherwise it was sold for a lot more than what I thought it would. So this just gives you an indication of how my mind works, why I'm a bit apprehensive. Hopefully it's just giving you a snapshot in what not to buy as well as what to buy. Buying in areas you know. No, actually, no, I will buy in any area. Anyway, and that brings me to my next point. I said to you, I'll show you a live transaction I've got at the moment. This is in Newcastle-under-Lyme. I don't know this area at all. I haven't got a clue about this area. It was brought to me. Now, this is not the house I'm buying. I'm buying the one next door. Can you see that really banger of a one? But when we look at this is the house next door on the market today, right? Anyone can buy this on the market today. It needs work. It's old fashioned, as you can see from these photographs. It's not bang up to date and modern. It's got heating and double glazing. But when you look at the picture from the rear, you'll see the house next door. Our one's extended. This is a 3-bed semi-shared drive. Ours is a 4-bedroom, and it's been extended on the side. We're buying that house there, but you can start to see and get an impression of this house here. And it's overgrown. Everything's overgrown about it. But this got put into my hands at 90 grand. Next door's up for 180, unextended. This is a 4-bed. Ours has got own drive. It's not a bad looking house. It's not a crappy one. It's the sort of thing an owner occupier would probably buy. And this will go to auction at guide price of 75 grand plus. We're expecting that to go for 125, 130, something in that region. But that just goes to show we'll buy anywhere if we believe we can make a profit. That house next door has given us confidence as well. That came on as we was about to exchange contracts on it. You know, you can see here, you've got sort of like council looking house here, 150 grand, needs work by the looks of it. Vicky's terraced houses at 145. I know they're not sold. That's the only thing that bothered me. There wasn't much sold. You had one here offers in excess of 130 here, sold up to contract, 2-bedroom house. So that's given me a little bit of confidence. It's semi-detached there, sold up to contract, 110 grand. That sounds to me like it's an investor stock. So around 100 grand, you're talking about Victorian terraced houses, let alone a 1928 semi-detached in a half-decent road. It gives you an indication. Stuart's asked a question, do you always buy through agents? Most of my stock comes from the open market. This one I've just showed you, we're buying direct from the vendor. So the answer to that question is that we don't always buy direct from agents. 85% of my stock, though, comes from estate agents. And 80% of them were sold subject to contract with someone else before I got to them. So it just gives you an indication of what we do. We've got 7 in the pipeline. We've exchanged 1, so we've got 6 going through to exchange at the moment. We are being quite brave now because I think the market's getting a little bit better. Keir's asked the question, what are your thoughts on leasehold flats? Do not touch them. Unless it's a real quality, and I say quality conversion in London or something, a really swanky area, and it's got a decent lease, or you've got access to extend the lease where you've got a certain amount of control. You will find flats cheap, but you'll see in auction a lot of them don't sell. And he's asked the question, what are my predictions for the market in 2024? I think the market's going to firm up. And the reason why I think it's going to firm up, and one of the reasons why I've been banging on about the market not collapsing for some time now, is if we look back over the last 50 years, and the times the market's collapsed, there have been reasons for it. They're fundamental reasons, and people have missed it this time round. The market collapses when enough people have to sell at the same time. Repossessions at the lowest level for donkey's years. There was 350,000 repossessions between 90 and 1995. The first quarter of this year, there was 600, but 600 residential repossessions. You compare that to the 90s, there's a huge difference. On top of that, we've followed a period of very, very tight lending, and both times the markets collapsed in the last 40 years followed a period of lax lending. So 2008 followed a period of lax lending. In the 1990s followed a period of lax lending. So when you get lax lending, you get enough people have to sell at the same time because they're the ones that are being repossessed. That's when you get a market collapse. And we haven't had that this time. Prior to 2008 and prior to 1990, the loan to value was 94%. The loan to value in the last 15 years has been an average of 82%. You can see people have got skin in the game. They've saved up. They're better quality borrowers, and they're not going to let their assets go that easily. And so there's going to be less stock on the market. And if you want to rent somewhere today, and you was thinking, do I buy, do I rent? And you are spending 300-400 grand on a house on your first purchase, you go and rent the equivalent house, you won't find it. People don't buy at that level to rent out. They were buying at the lower levels to rent out. So you don't get quality properties to rent out. So you've got no choice but to buy a house if you've saved up your money and so and so forth. So I don't see a collapse in the market. I see it firming up quite a lot. What are my main sources you check to know what buyers want? To remember is up until 2016, I would have bought anything with a front door because I knew my market was buy-to-let buyers who, as long as they could get a mortgage on it, would buy it. Didn't matter what condition it was in. That's all changed now. So I'm very cautious about buying stock that would sell to an investor, because the investors now are a lot more canny than they used to be because their purses are tight now. You know, they've got taxation, they've got higher borrowing costs. So they're looking at the market a very different way to what they were in 2016. So I want to make sure that I'm selling into a market that wants the product that I've got. So if you look at all the things that I've purchased, they've been good quality houses, they're decent looking houses, they've got potential, and owner occupiers and developers would buy them at the same time. So I'm always aware of that side. Owner occupiers do buy an auction. They do. And we've sold. So I like the 1930s houses, 1920s, big Victorian houses, big quality ones, nice ones, because I think again, you get that overlap because investors will buy if they can get HMO license on it and if it's big enough to convert into lots of rooms, whereas they probably wouldn't buy a 2 up, 2 down in a tight little area. So you get a bigger spread across the market, if that makes any sense. Always check. One thing I always do is speak to auctioneers, and I'll always say to the auctioneers, so what's selling at the moment? They'll say anything. Well, no, what's not selling? Flats with short leases. They'll give you an indication of what is struggling to sell. And you just keep away from that stock. That's the most important. Keep away from that. Do I like putting lots in at low guides? Yes, I do care. I do like low guide prices. I always place mine in or around or just under what I've paid for them. And we don't bring things home. We're not the type of trader that goes, oh, I'm not going to sell it for anything less. I paid for it, because I look at the money working for us is actually better out in the market rather than in something that if it doesn't sell or it's going to sell for just about cover its cost, I might make a small loss. I'll take the small loss, because actually a loss can be good for your tax position. If you're paying lots of tax like we do, you can mitigate that against your tax. So it's not as big a loss as you think it is. And then on top of that, the money's back in the pot straight away to go again. And that money, if you just say, for instance, held on to something because you didn't get the price in auction and then you did it up and sold it, you might be 6 to 12 months holding that unit to get the same amount of profit that you could have made on that money, or less profit, and you would have made that money 3 or 4 times over the course of the next 12 months. So we're looking at money management. Sometimes it takes, take a bit of a loss because of that reason. Let's see if we got any more questions. Great point, opportunity. Yeah, I mean, that is it's the way I look at it. Is I've always seen it this way. It's an opportunity costs are, you've got to be confident that you'll be able to replace the stock. And that's what I've always had. I've had that confidence for all the time I've been doing this. There's always a deal around for me to buy. Always. There's never been a time. The only time I don't buy deals is I sat on my hands for 6 months when, unless it was really cheap, I didn't want to buy it. And that was from September until March. We had agreed to buy a couple of bits, as I showed you, but we stopped buying bulk. We said, no, we don't want to take a chance on anything. So bar me saying I'm actually a bit nervous at the moment, I want to see what the market's doing before I jump in there. We did the same during the pandemic years when it first hit. That March auction that we had, we just dumped everything, just got our money back, and then waited to see what happened, because I knew that the government were going to chuck money at the system. I didn't realize how quickly the system would get back to a thriving market. I knew the market was, so people are aware, in 2016, when 3 things happened. You had taxation changes for landlords, you had stamp duty changes for landlords, and you had the referendum. And the referendum to leave the European Union was voted for us to leave. And I knew for the next 4 years until we came out, the market would go and sort of like stagnate for a while. And then the amount of people that sat on the fence for the next 4 years, the transaction numbers were down substantially. The property prices didn't really rise. They just stayed stagnant. They might have gone up a little bit, but I knew 2020, bar the pandemic years, if that hadn't have happened, the market was going to go ballistic anyway. It was like backed up, waiting to go. People had sat on their hands, waiting. And that happened at the same time as the lockdowns, and people still wanted to buy houses. And then they obviously changed the stamp duty, and that encouraged them to come out in droves and drove that market even higher than what it would have gone. It would have gone anyway. It would have definitely gone anyway. So by that period from March to that very first auction, I think that was around the June time, we looked at a few things, we bid hard. And then once we realized the market was normally functioning, well, it wasn't functioning normally in the traditional sense, but the fact that people were starting to buy again made us come back in the market. We hoovered up a load of stock that we were looking at, and then we had the benefit of that for the next 18 months because it took ages to get the damn things through. And we had the benefit of the market rising. So when there's a change, I tend to sit on my hands, but when I can see what's going on, or I've got confidence, a good feeling about things. Like now, we're looking at things and saying we're fairly confident the market's not going to collapse and it's going to come back. We know the cycle in interest rates has peaked. We're 99.9% sure of that, unless something drastically happens. I can see inflation being a bit sticky for maybe a month or two because of the Red Sea situation. There could be just a little bit nip up of inflation. I can't see it being a lot because the rest of the pressure is on a downward trajectory. So instead of dropping substantially, it might drop a little bit rather than like we just saw. There was a big drop from the previous month. I think we're on that downward trajectory. Swap rates are lower. I think there's confidence generally in things next year, and buyers will come back. I don't know if in droves, but it will certainly be coming out in force in that first 6 months of the year, and then we'll have to play it by ear. So watching the market is very, very important to know what you're doing, because this is risky if you don't know what you're doing. So hi Paul, great session. Is it possible to get a recording? Now, I don't know, Ravi, because this is the first time I've ever used this software. It says it's recording. If it does, then I'll post it up, or I'll send you an email, because I think you've all registered on here, so you've got the correct email addresses. Then I'll send you an email through from the list of the people that have registered. So if that's possible, I'll send it to you. If it doesn't, apologize. And also tomorrow I'm doing another webinar, just so you're aware. I'm doing one on negotiation. I'll post it. In fact, I'll email it out to everybody when we've finished, to let you know about tomorrow's one. Same time, it'll only be for about half an hour. It's the psychology of negotiation, because I've got a technique I use, which I'll go through, and it's very powerful if it's done correctly. And I'll show you how I utilize it with agents as well, how you can get agents to come up with a figure that you want to pay. All right, not you say I want to pay this, they'll come up with a figure. And because negotiation is not about the price, it's about the psychology behind it. It's about control. It's how you get control of it. I've actually paid more than asking price many occasions. Is that because I'm the worst negotiator in the world? No, I could see the value, and I wanted to take control of that unit. And I knew that if I paid a good price for it, I would still get a good price the other end. So it's understanding a little bit more behind the scenes. I'm going to bring it to a head now. So we've just been over the hour. I hope you've enjoyed it. My email address is paul@paulribbons.com. Listen, it's been a blast. I've enjoyed myself, and hopefully you have. Thank you very much for your time. But I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into how I think.